Alright, thanks for tuning in. This is going to be a video focused on while loops and Python programming. Oh, that's not even right. Today is going to be a video about loops in Python, not just while loops. So let's get into this. Looping and programming, if you're not familiar with any other programming language, it's a really important part. Basically, it just lets you do things multiple times without having to type it in a bunch. There's a bit more to it. You can also do it if you don't know the number of times you have to run something, but we'll do examples of all that, and I'll get into that more. As I said before, loops can be used to repeat something. So in the past we did, oh, I forgot to open a terminal. Let me do that. All right, my terminal's all opened up, so we're ready to start. And like I said before, you can use it to repeat something. So let's get into while loops, and we'll go over just the most basic example of that, and that's if you wanted to print something, let's say an infinite amount of times. So obviously, you could say we wanted to print, that's not how you spell hello world a bunch of times. And again, I said infinitely. Obviously, it's not possible to make it infinite by copying and pasting, but you could do a lot. So this would obviously print it 10 times, but still it wouldn't be infinite. What you could do is say while, and then a Boolean, as we talked about before. In this case, I'm just going to say true, and type that in. And let me show you what would happen. You can see it just keeps printing hello world, and it's printing a lot, even though it looked like it wasn't printing that much. I'm scrolling right now. You can see the scroll bar moving. That's just because it prints so fast. Now let's explain what this is actually doing. So a while loop starts like this. It has while, and then a statement that returns a Boolean. So just like we talked about if statements, where it was like if number equals 2, and then we'd run that. It's the same exact thing. So you could say while number equals 2, and then run that. Same kind of thing. In this case, I just said true. And what it does is it checks this statement, and if it evaluates to true, then it will run this. Then it goes back up, and it checks after it's done running everything in the indented part. It goes back up, and it'll check this statement again, and if it's true, it'll run again, and that just repeats until either it's not true or until the program's exited. In my case, I exited the program. If you don't know how to do that, it's Control-C. But that's not that important right now. Right now, we're just going to focus on the loops. So a good example when you'd want to use while loops is if you wanted somebody to type in a positive integer, for example. So we've gone over all this stuff before. I'm going to type out the code and then go over it. The only thing that's going to be new here is the while loop. Okay, so I typed out this really simple code, and let me explain what it does. I actually just made a small correction. This should actually be a negative number, and I'll explain that in 1 second. What this does is, again, it sets number equal to -1. That's just a regular integer. We've gone over that in the past. And then there's the while loop here. Let's come back to that. So then inside the while loop, it sets number equal to input. Oh, I made another mistake here. And it should cast that to an integer, just so it's not a string. Now again, right here it says enter a number, and then it saves that as an integer to the number variable, and then after it's done with the loop, it'll print number. Notice that this is not indented. That means that it's not part of the loop. Let me actually press enter one more time just to make that a bit more clear. This is not part of the loop because it's not indented, so this will not actually run within the loop. So if we go back to the top, again, we set number equal to -1. And the reason why we did that is because this statement checks to see if number is less than 0. If number is less than 0, it'll repeat. So again, while this is the statement, number is less than 0, and obviously you want it to run at least once. In other programming languages, you can have a do-while loop. In Python, unfortunately, there is no do-while loop, but that's something to be concerned about later. So basically, we want this to run at least once. So that's why we set number equal to -1, because again, this checks to see if this statement is true, and if it is, then it'll run the code. So let's run this, and I'll make that a bit more clear. Sorry about that, I accidentally typed in a decimal. We'll get into that more in the future, but here I just want to show you again, -6, -4, anything less than 0. But if we type in 1, for example, it'll print 1 because it'll break out of this while loop and it'll say print number. So this is a great way to actually get a positive integer from a user that might be difficult and might not follow exact directions telling them to give a positive number. So while loops are really useful, and those will be used in, I would say, 95% of the projects that we'll actually write, just because it's a really important basic part of programming in general, any kind of loops, and while loops in Python are very, very important. Now let's get into for loops. So for loops in Python work in a very strange way compared to other languages. Personally, I am not a fan of how for loops work in Python. That's one of the things I do not like about the language, but I'm not going to concern myself with showing you different examples of for loops in other languages. We're just going to stick with Python. So the way a for loop works is the structure again is off, but it looks like this. So for a variable in, and then really anything. This is how it's just so hard to explain. That's the problem I have with for loops in Python. Let me just make it clear to you and give you a proper example, and then we'll go over what that example actually does. So here I typed out a really basic example of a for loop, and we've gone over lists in the past. This is just a list of strings. I said banana, bread, and salad, so maybe it's like a shopping list or something. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is what this for loop actually does. So here again it says for and then item in L. So L is the name of the list because items in L, and you can put whatever you want here. This is basically the variable that it will save the item it's iterating through into in order to run in the program. So as you can see, I do call item here, but it's not defined anywhere up here, but it is defined in here. So what this is it's really like a temporary variable. So if I said x and then over here I said x again, that would work. That would do the exact same thing, because this just means as you iterate through, so you go through the 0th index first, so then it gets banana, it saves banana to x, and then it'll save bread to x after it runs everything. So it'll run through banana, it'll print everything in the for loop. Even if you had more stuff down here, everything in it, and then it would go back up, then it would go to bread, and then it would print bread, salad, x equals salad, and then it would print salad. So let me go through that. Let me actually change it back to item just so it's a bit more sensible. And we're going to run this one more time. So you can see it prints banana, bread, salad, again because it's iterating through this list, and then it's printing each of those items. It doesn't have to just be a list though. It can be tons of things. It can even be a string. I'm just going to say Python here. Because we're in Python, why not say that? What it will actually do is it will iterate through this string, but it'll iterate by character. So you'll see it'll print Python, and again, it'll print that on its own line because of the way that Python works. So you can see that Python, it prints out. So I'm just retyping this because there's an important step that I missed, and I wanted to come back to it after I explained everything. So once again, if we run this, let me get rid of this line of code. It's not necessary. Put a space out here. Oh, it won't print the number. Print number. So if we run this, it does the same thing. Enter a number. If it's less than 0, it'll ask us again. If it's greater than or equal to 0, it won't. It'll print the number, right? So again, with 15 or 25, press the wrong key, it'll print 25. There's this syntax you can use in loops, and that is the continue and the break command. These are very, very useful when programming with loops because you just use them so frequently. So continue, what that means is it will stop wherever it is. So even if there's more code here, say you had another print command here, for example, it would actually skip that and it would go back up to the loop and it would just run it again. So again, continue just means continue on past this iteration. So here it's not actually going to do anything because it would continue back up there. But let me show you something. So if we actually print the numbers that we save before we break out of the loop, let me show you without the continue command and what would happen if we ran that. So it'll enter a number. It asks us to enter a number. If I put in -5, again, it will loop, but it will also print it because it says print number. However, if I put in continue and I ran this again, it will never actually do that. -5, just enter a number, and then again 10, it would just print it because it would go back down here. This is never used like that because that defeats the purpose. Usually there will be some kind of if statement that will then have continue within it. So say if you wanted to see if the number was divisible by 2, again, if number mod 2 continue. So then if you actually type in a number that's divisible by 2, oh, I'm sorry. So then if you actually type in a number that's divisible by 2, say -10, it will continue. It won't actually print the number, but if we type in -5, which is not divisible by 2, it will print -5. So this is better demonstrated in an actual project. That's why I'm not going to show you right now. And then we can also do break. So I'm going to just use the same example. Break is similar to continue in that it won't run any code after it, but instead of going back to the top of the loop, it will completely break out of the loop. So rather than checking this condition again, it will break, it will go to the next line past the loop, and in that case, that's the print number. So let me change this to something else. Like, broken. Okay? So like we broke out of it. And let's change this to true, just so it will always run. That's not what I meant to do. Okay. And then if we type in 10, it'll still, oh, sorry, bad example. So then if we type in something like 5, it'll still run, it'll print number, and then it will repeat. But here, if we type in something divisible by 2, it'll break out of the loop and it'll type out broken. So let me show you that. So let's type in 10, which obviously is divisible by 2, and it'll say broken because we broke out of it. This is the same thing in a for loop. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. Again, as always, if there's any questions, please let me know. I'll be sure to go over them. I will leave some links in the description for further reading. And I hope you stick around for the project tutorials that I'll be producing in the future. I'm really excited about them. I think we're going to make some really cool stuff. And I think you're going to learn a lot if you follow along by yourself at home. Again, thank you for watching, and be safe.